जय हिंद स्टूडेंट्स, आप लोग कैसे हैं? I hope you all are staying safe at home, right? And today we are going to discuss a very important human organ. I think it is probably the most important or one of the most important human organ, which is human eye. It is only because of human eye that we are able to see the wonderful things around us, isn't it, students? So, we will discuss in this session about the human eye, its construction, the major or the main components of human eye, their functions, and then we'll discuss some important terms and definitions. Like we'll discuss the power of accommodation, then we will obviously discuss about the near point, the far point, then range of vision, right students? So before we start with the construction of the human eye, I would like you to watch this small clipping based on the construction of human eye. The human eye is probably the most important optical instruments. In principle, an eye can be compared to a photographic camera. In a camera, the aperture of the lens has to be adjusted, but the eye can regulate its aperture at its own. In other words, it is far more delicate and perfect than the finest camera designed by the man. And the human eye enables us to see the beautiful, colorful world around us. Now let us discuss the important parts of the eye. First, we will start with cornea. In front of the eye, the sclerotic merges into a transparent curved tissue which is known as cornea. Actually, the light enters the eye through the cornea. It is the front part of the eye which is covered by a transparent curved tissue. Next is iris. It is a circular diaphragm behind the cornea and is a dark colored muscular diaphragm which has a small circular opening in the middle. And it has a central hole which is known as the pupil of the eye. The iris contains the pigment that determines the color of the eye. Through the muscle action, the iris can change the area of the pupil from 2 to 8 mm in diameter so as to adjust and admit a suitable quantity of light into the eye. Pupil is thus a small circular opening of iris. It appears black because no light is reflected from it. It changes sizes to accommodate for the amount of light that is available. The iris regulates the light by adjusting the size of the pupil. It actually regulates and controls the amount of light entering the eye. Now, two cases may arise. First is when the intensity of the light is more or it is a bright source of light. Then the iris makes the pupil to contract, and as a result, the amount of light entering the eye decreases. So this is how the amount of light entering the eye is regulated. And the second case is when the intensity of light is less or if the light is dim, then the iris dilates the pupil so that more light can enter the eye. Next is eye lens, which is the crystalline lens. Behind the iris is a converging lens, which is a convex lens composed of microscopic glassy fibers. It is more convex at its back than in front. It is held behind the iris by the ciliary muscles. The function of the lens is to form real and inverted images of external objects on the retina. When tension is exerted on the lens by the attached muscles, the glassy fibers slides over each other, causing the shape of the lens to change and thus focusing the image properly. And as we have discussed, the eye lens is held in its position by the action of ciliary muscles. And The real and inverted image is formed on the retina. It is a light sensitive membrane on the back interior wall of the eyeball. It is composed of nerves and two types of light sensitive cells called rods and cones. The rods are more sensitive to light and distinguish light from dark in low light intensities. While on the other hand, the cones can distinguish frequency ranges of sufficiently intense light, which the brain interprets as light of different colors. And the fluid between the eyeball and the retina is known as the vitreous humor. And there are two distinct spots in the retina. One, the yellow spot, the most sensitive part of the retina, and the other, the least sensitive part, known as the blind spot. I hope students you have enjoyed the video and you have seen the construction, the function of various parts of the human eye, right? Let me recap all those parts or all those important parts of the human eye as well as their function once again. Let's recap that, right? This is basically the structure of a human eye. Its size is about, students, 2 to 3 centimeter, right? And as you are aware, the front curved tissue, it is the curved transparent tissue through which the light enters the eye, that is known as cornea. So, this portion, it is known as cornea. It is actually the transparent curved tissue in the front of the eye through which the light enters. That's cornea, right? Behind the cornea, there is a central diaphragm known as iris. This is iris. It contains a central hole which is known as pupil. This is the pupil. And iris, it contains some pigments which is helpful in determining the color of the eye, right? And also, students, due to the muscle action of the iris, it controls the size of the pupil. The iris can vary the size of the pupil from 2 millimeter to 8 millimeter, so as to allow appropriate, that is suitable amount of light to enter into the eye. As we have discussed, in the low light conditions or in the conditions of low intensity of light, the size of the pupil is maximum, so as to allow more light into the eye. While in the broad daylight, in the bright conditions, the size of the pupil is minimum, that is about 2 millimeter, so as to control the amount of light entering the eye. So that's the function of iris and pupil, right? Behind the iris, there is the eye lens. It is of converging nature, that is, it is a convex lens. And students, it is made up of microscopic glassy fibers. And it is very clear it is converging, but it is more convex at the back than at the front. So this is the eye lens. This is the eye lens which is of converging nature. It is of converging nature, or it is a convex lens. More convex at the back than at the front. And what is the function of the eye lens? The function of the eye lens is to produce a real and inverted image. And it has got a very, very important characteristics. I mean, it can automatically adjust its aperture as well as it can automatically adjust its focal length, so as to enable us to see clearly both the nearby objects as well as the distant objects. So that's the function of the crystalline lens, which is made up of microscopic glassy fibers. And students, it is held in its position due to the ciliary muscles. These are the ciliary muscles. These are the ciliary muscles which holds the position of the converging lens, right? And this is a very important part. This is the retina. It acts as a screen where the real and inverted image of an object is formed. And retina, it consists of light sensitive cells, rods and cones. Rods are the sensitive cells which are very sensitive to the intensity of the light, while cones on the other hand are color sensitive. And also students, there are two distinct spots on the retina. One is the most sensitive spot, which is somewhere over here. It is known as the yellow spot. This is known as the yellow spot. While the least sensitive spot on the retina, it is known as the blind spot. This is where the blind spot is. This is the blind spot. And this is the nerve. And the function of the nerve, optic nerve, is to take the light signal from the retina to the brain. So this is the structure of human eye and various parts of human eye. And we have also discussed the function of each part. Also students, this crystalline lens, it divides the entire eye into two chambers. This is the first chamber and this is the second chamber. Actually, the eye is of almost spherical shape, and it is of spherical shape and it holds its shape because of the pressure from the fluid which is inside the eye. And these are the two chambers which contains two different fluids of almost the same refractive index. One is known as the aqueous humor. This chamber, which is between the crystal lens and the cornea, it contains fluid which is known as aqueous humor. While on the other hand, this part, which is this chamber, which is between the crystal lens and the retina, it contains another watery fluid which is known as vitreous humor. Both the liquids are almost of the same refractive index. And students, one more thing I must tell. When light enters the eye, then it passes through various mediums. First, it travels through air and the refractive index of the air is 1. Then it passes through cornea. Its refractive index is 1.38. Then it goes through this aqueous humor, which I have already stated, it's a watery liquid. Its refractive index is about 1.33. Then it passes through the converging lens, which I have told you, it's made up of microscopic glassy fibers. So, lens, eye lens, its refractive index is 1.4. And finally, before reaching the retina, where the image is formed, it passes through another water liquid which is known as vitreous humor. It is known as vitreous humor. It has refractive index of about 1.34. So these are the various mediums through which light travels while entering the eye. Clear, students? So these are the important parts. Cornea, then iris containing a central hole which is known as pupil, then the lens, most important part. It is held in its position by the ciliary muscles. Then retina, acting as a screen for the eye. The real and inverted image will be formed on the retina. For a normal eye, whether the object is nearby or far away, the image must be always formed on the retina so as to have a clear and distinct image, right? This is the optic nerve which sends the light signal from the retina to the brain. So this is the construction of human eye. I hope you have understood this concept clearly, right? This is just to recap whatever we have discussed in that short clipping. Now before we proceed with some important terms like power of accommodation, then L.D.D.V, least distance of distant vision, near point, far point, and range of vision, I will ask you, or rather I will request you to watch the small clipping which is based on power of accommodation, and then we'll continue with our discussion. Right, students? Accommodation of the eye. It is the process by which the eye adapts itself for objects at different distances. The focusing is done by the eye by altering the curvature of the crystalline lens, which is caused by a change in the tension on the lens by the attached muscles. This process by which the eye sees objects at all distances is called the accommodation. The range of accommodation gradually decreases with the age. It is because the crystalline lens loses its elasticity as one grows older. In this case, the eye lens is thinnest when the object lies at far point. The normal eye produces its image on the retina by accommodating the eye lens to maximum focal length, while the eye lens is thickest at the time when the object lies at the near point. In this case, the normal eye produces its image again on the retina, and the eye achieves it by accommodating the eye lens to minimum focal length. Students, I hope you have enjoyed this short clipping based on power of accommodation. Let me brief you about this topic once again, right? Power of accommodation actually is the ability, it is the unique ability of the human eye so as to adjust its aperture and focal length so as to enable us to see clearly both the nearby objects as well as the far away objects. So, a normal eye can see clearly both the nearby objects and the far away objects only because of power of accommodation. Clear, students? And here I must mention a very important point. When the object is lying far away from the eye, then the eye is somewhat relaxed. In such a situation, when we view a faraway object, the thickness of the eye lens is minimum and its focal length is maximum. While on the other hand, as the object is brought gradually closer to each other, then the eye is put to strain by the muscles, isn't it? So as a result, the ciliary muscles tend to adjust the aperture of the human eye. And as a result, as the object is brought closer to the eye, what happens is the thickness of the eye lens is maximum and the focal length of the eye lens at that instant is minimum. So you can see the eye lens, it tends to change its aperture, or rather it tends to change its focal length by changing the thickness, so as to enable us to see clearly both the nearby objects as well as the far away objects, right? It is only due to this reason that even when we are viewing a nearby object or we are viewing a far away object, in both the cases for a normal eye, the image is formed on the retina. That is when the image is distinct and clear. If the image is formed in front of the retina or behind the retina, then the image will be out of the focus. The image on the retina would be blurred, and those are the defects of human eye which are known as myopia and hypermetropia, which we will be discussing in the next lecture, right? So I hope power of accommodation is clear to you all. Next one is least distance of distant vision. It is also known as near point. In short, we can write it as L.D.D.V, least distance of distant vision. It is actually, students, the minimum distance at which an object, when placed from the eye, can be seen clearly and distinctly. For a normal adult and for a normal eye, it is taken as 25 centimeter, and it is normally represented by capital letter D. So for normal eye, L.D.V is considered to be 25 centimeter. Here I must mention one very important point, that L.D.V is not constant, it varies with the age, right? Again, I would like to mention the power of accommodation also tends to deteriorate with the age because of the weakening of the ciliary muscles. So the near point, far point of a person with the age, it also gets changed, and accordingly the person tends to suffer from various eye defects, right? So L.D.D.V for a normal adult eye is considered to be 25 centimeter, but it needs to be very clear that L.D.D.V is not constant. It varies with the age of the person. Here I have prepared a chart. When a person or during young age, the L.D.V is quite small. At 10 years it is 10 centimeter, 20 years it is 12 centimeter, at 30 years it is 15 centimeter. And for a grown-up adult 40 years, the L.D.V is 25 centimeter. For 50 years of age, L.D.V is 40 centimeter, and for 60 years of age, L.D.V is 100 centimeter. So L.D.V actually gradually increases with the increase in the age. Right, students? So L.D.V for a normal eye, for convenience, we consider it to be 25 centimeter. So while solving numericals, until and unless otherwise mentioned, the value of L.D.V, that is capital D, is to be considered as 25 centimeters. Clear, students? So it is the minimum distance of an object from the eye at which the object can be seen clearly and distinctly. Now, what about far point then? Just the opposite of it. It is the farthest point up to which an object can be seen by the human eye clearly and distinctly. And beyond that distance, the object can't be seen by the eye clearly. So that is known as far point. Far point of a normal eye is infinity. Now here, I must clarify this point, infinity. How the far point of a normal eye can become infinite. Infinite distance doesn't mean that it can't be measured. Now, I've told you, the size of the human eye is only about 2 to 3 centimeters, right? Now, even if an object is lying at a distance of 50 meters means 15 to 100, 5,000 centimeters, which is many times large as compared to the size or dimensions of the eye. Then even if an object is placed at a distance of 50 or 100 meters from our eye, then that object can be considered to be placed at infinity when we consider the size of the eye. So whenever the distance of the object from the eye is very large as compared to the dimensions of the eye, then that distance may be considered to be very large and infinite. So in that respect, the far point of a normal eye is considered to be infinity. So students, for normal eye, L.D.V, that is near point, is 25 centimeter and the far point is infinity. So what will be the range of normal vision then? For a normal eye, the range of the vision will be from 25 centimeter to infinity. So that is known as the range of the vision. So students, I sincerely hope you have enjoyed this session and you have understood about the human eye, its various parts, the function of various parts, and I have tried to explain it from physics point of view, making it clear the refractive indices of various medium through which light has to pass while entering into the eye, right? So I have tried to include some short clippings as well, so as to make the entire session much more interesting and enthralling. So please practice making the diagram of human eye, and do remember these important terms and definitions, and do study well. So that's it for this lecture. We'll continue in the next lecture, and we'll discuss about human eye defects in that lecture. Till then, goodbye, and do take very good care of yourself. Thank you.